Hello, and thanks for stopping by. This is Spreadsheet Excellence, and I'm Joe Pryor. So we've spent a lot of time talking about Excel generally and Excel, how you would use it or where you're going to get it. We've taken a look through the UI, but it's been a minute and we haven't really done anything in Excel. Well, that changes today. So as you can see on the screen, we're going to talk about spreadsheet design, and we're going to build a really basic spreadsheet that will illustrate the entry-level skills for the purposes of building a spreadsheet that you need. And we're going to build on all these skills in future episodes, but everything starts here. So let's just jump right in, shall we? Okay. So here we are, we're on our desktop, and we're going to go ahead and open up Excel from the Start menu. Now, what we're going to build is going to look kind of like this, but there's some problems here in that the formulas aren't working quite right. And so we'll talk about errors as well and how you can diagnose them and get around them. But just as a sort of cheat sheet to where we're going, we're going to build something kind of like that. So let's go ahead and open Excel. You click on Start, and for me, I've got it in this little launcher for the window. But if you don't know where it is in your computer, just click on the little magnifying glass, and you're going to get a pop-up window. And unfortunately, it's on a different monitor for my computer, but you'll get a pop-up window, and you just start typing in Excel. I didn't get past EX before Windows asked me if I wanted to open Excel. So here we are, we're at our launcher. I spent a great deal of time talking about the launcher in the last episode, so I'm not going to bore you here. Go ahead and click Blank Workbook. And we're going to get started. So the first thing you should do is decide what exactly your Excel workbook is going to be for. Now I'm going to zoom in some so that when I'm working on the screen, it's a little easier for you to read, especially if you're on a monitor, a laptop screen, or a cell phone. First thing you should do is, obviously, you need to have kind of a purpose for your spreadsheet, because Book 6 is not really a great name for a spreadsheet. So we're going to go ahead, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to save it, and we're going to give it a name. So for my purposes, I'm just going to save it on my desktop, but you save it in an important folder. And the best place to know for sure where you're putting it is to click on Browse, and then that will give you the opportunity to open a traditional Windows Explorer and figure out where you want to put it. And the best part about Windows is they're going to have folders you open very often right here on the side. So like I said, I'm going to go ahead and drop this on, you know what, I'm not going to put my desktop. I'm going to go ahead and put it in OneDrive, Microsoft OneDrive, and I'm going to put it into my Symphony files. And one of them I have is for this project here, and we're going to put it right in here. Okay, so let's go ahead and press Save, and boom, we have our document saved as Microsoft Excel, as Excel Trainer 2. I also have autosave turned on, so we're going to take a look here. This is the quick bar. I've talked about this a little bit. If you have autosave turned on and you've saved your workbook to a cloud driving storage device, whether that's OneDrive, Google Drive, Dropbox, etc., you should always have the option to turn autosave on. And if you do that, it'll allow you to close the document without worrying about losing anything, because it's automatically saving every time you press a keystroke, and it goes right to Microsoft OneDrive right there. So we're going to go ahead and open it that way. And it opens up on my last monitor. So we're going to bring it back over. And the next thing we should do is we should figure out what exactly we're building for the purposes of our individual sheet. So for my purposes, I'm going to be building a tracker, and I've got a number of locations that my business is operating, and we have two different metrics we want to go ahead and grade them on. So we're going to say the first thing we should do is list out all of our locations. So you just pick your cell and start typing. Now I'm going to come down here a little bit, and we'll talk about why in a second. All right, so if you're tracking about store locations, you obviously want to know your store locations. But what am I measuring? Well, we have two measures we're going to go for. Today we're going to take a look at cleanliness score and we're going to take to look at customer service. And give me a minute here, and I'm going to go ahead and type in a bunch of store locations. And we're back. Okay, so we've got our locations and we've got our scores. But the first thing you're almost certainly going to notice is that things are ugly. Things don't really seem all that legible. Words are flowing over into the next cell. And take a look at what happens if I type anything over here. Now we can't read. What exactly is cleanliness? What is that rating for? So what I'm going to do is, we talked about resizing your cells. We're going to go ahead and do that here. And I'm going to go ahead and put down these scores. So my cleanliness rating is apparently out of 20, and my customer service score is apparently out of 50. And what am I doing is, I've written the measures up here because these can change. Now, how often am I measuring my customers? I'm doing that quarterly. So we have cleanliness as one of the metrics we're watching, but I don't want to type cleanliness quarter 1, cleanliness quarter 2, cleanliness quarter 3, etc. over and over again. So we're going to go ahead and grab it with the move cursor right here on the side. We're going to move this up. And we're going to type in Q1, Q2, Q3, etc. And remember, you can just drag this across. That's Q4. So let's do it again for customer service. Q1 and Q2, select these two, drag here at the very bottom where you see the big black plus, and drag it across. So now we have quarter 1 and through quarter 4. And what we're looking at is cleanliness for the first block here. But it's not really clear what's going on in this row or this row or this row. So what we can do is we can select all of these rows together, and we can come up here to merge and center. And so what merge and center does is it sort of breaks down the barrier between all of the cells you've selected, and you can do as many as you want. Frequently, I am, when I do this kind of thing and I will put together a listing, I'll actually segment off a pretty large block and write sort of an instruction or a description of what I'm doing. And I'll go over here to the page view, and I'll take a look at where the page break is. So I'm going to print something, and I want to know what it looks like. I can make sure that whatever descriptive stuff I'm doing is off screen. And in this instance, you see we actually spill over a little bit into the second page. So the view here will allow you to figure out what's going to be printed on what page. And now that I've done page view at least once, you'll sort of see here a page break line. Something I learned in college is you take your measures and you move them out of the way so they're not part of the actual table. And if you do that, it gives you one central location where you can change the measure up here and then affect the rest of the table. Now again, we'll see all of this in action. What I want to do is I want to actually insert a couple of lines to separate my measures section from my actual table. So we're going to go ahead and select an entire row, row 5, and we're going to go ahead and click Insert. Now, if we kick the pull down here, we actually do have some specifics that we can choose, insert cells or insert a row or anything. But this is enough. The default here, when you've clicked it, the row like this, is that it's going to insert above. Notice how it's adding new rows, and it's moving the entire sheet down. Okay, so if you click it here and you say, I want to insert, what are you going to do? You're going to create a bunch of new empty cells. And that's fine. Just be aware. And the same thing generally applies, is it adds to the right. So it's always assuming you want to create more data. Let's go ahead and click the undo arrow up here in the top left. Or if you're using keyboard commands, Control Z to do that. And so I'm going to go ahead and select all of these scores right here, this section, alpha 1 through delta 5. And you always, when you read cell references that include more than one cell, you do so from top left to bottom right, just like reading a book in any Western language. And I'm going to go ahead and click this border designer. And I like to do the thick outside border. And this very clearly segments off this section of space. And I'm going to go ahead and name it so that I know what exactly I'm doing up here. So I'm using measures to tell myself that I'm rating these things out of 20. Measures, scores, grades, etc. These are all terms you could use. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and mimic what we've done here over here with cleanliness. We're going to do it with customer service. And then what we're also going to do is we're going to go ahead and do that over the whole thing. And we're going to tell ourselves when this data is relevant for. The last thing we need to do is we need to increase the size. As you can see here, the names are a little long. And just double click on the side and you'll increase the length. It already looks a lot more legible. There's some things we're going to do to format it better in the future, but what we can do now is we've already done a lot to really increase the readability. And actually, I feel like maybe I've added too much space between the measures and the actual state data table itself. Let's right click on a row here. Doesn't matter, 6 or 7, take your pick. And we're going to go ahead and just select delete. And that will just take that entire row and move everything up. And you'll notice what what Excel is doing is it's moving everything to match a row or a cell or a column. If you were to delete a specific cell, it would ask you what you wanted to do. Do you want to move everything up to fill that space? Do you want to move everything left to fill that space? You need to do something with the space. If you want to just delete the contents, just go ahead and move into it and press delete or press backspace, etc. So we have our basic table and we have a better idea of where we're trying to type things in. Now we need to go and collect data out in the real world. So the purpose of Excel is to categorize and organize data in what's called tabular format. And a tabular format simply means you use columns and you use rows to organize it in a manner that is visually useful to the human eye. And then you can use this as well to do machine statistics, to generate tables, to do any kind of quick analysis. It'll save you a lot of time. But unfortunately, on the front end of things, there's quite a bit of typing involved. So bear with me again for a second. I'm going to go away and I'm going to enter a bunch of scores and then we'll come back. Okay, we're back. I've entered a number of values in the table here, and I want to illustrate some of the ways you can move around in this data. So I'm selected here with C10, and it's near north, quarter 1, cleanliness. So right there. And if I type data into it, you can go from there to a number of different places. You can go down by pressing enter, or you can go right by pressing tab. If you pressed shift and those buttons, you'll go back. So if I press down to go and enter to go down, if I press shift enter, I go back up. And if I press tab to go right, and I can press shift tab to go back left. Now you can do all of these things with the mouse. You can come over here and select and select and select, or you can move around with the keyboard. Those are all fine, but when you are typing a lot of data into Excel, it is much faster to move around without having to take your hand off the keyboard, off specifically the typing part of your keyboard. So the Q, W, E, R, T, all the letter keys and everything else. If you have your keyboard right in front of you and you have your hands on the letters and the numbers and everything else, if you have to take your hand off that keyboard for even 2 seconds every time you want to select the next entry, that's going to add it's going to add up. It's going to add an infinite amount of time to your analysis. Similarly, if you were to type numbers and then come down here to the keypad arrow, or the arrows, and then you type in again and again. Oh, I've made a mistake. I can just press shift and enter to come back, and I press 12 again, and we're good. So being able to move around with shift and tab and enter will save you a great deal of time when you're maneuvering through an Excel spreadsheet. So I'd say we're off to a pretty good start, but we're running out of time for this episode. So we have, in this episode, started our Excel spreadsheet. We've worked on basic cell formatting and data entry. We've also looked at the sort of best practice in how to separate your measures and your scores. And in the next episode, we're going to take a look at applying some basic formulae to all of this data, and also how can we begin to derive some meaningful insights from all of this information, and how can it help our business do better in the future. However, that's in the next one. So until then, I wish you all my best, and this is Joe Pryor with Spreadsheet Excellence.